going to be breaking down the Pixar movies, okay? And the thing is that we've been planning to do this for a while now, okay? This has been one of those topics that we've been planning on doing for a while, okay? And we've kind of been waiting for the time. I knew when we saw Coco, okay? When we both saw Coco, I knew that it was going to be a time when this would be a good thing to do. You know, when this was going to be a really nice thing to do. And I know that you had very high praise for the film as well.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed Coco.
So, and then I sent you last night because I just stumbled upon it, okay? A ranking of Pixar by a film critic, a certain film critic that I'll get into in a second. And I thought that it would prompt a very interesting discussion, or at least a good segue into us. Jackson Murphy of Lights, Camera, Jackson. If you remember, this kid went viral a few years ago, back in like 2011 or so. Because I remember he was on Ebert's show. Ebert Presents at the Movies. He was on that. Old film critic, okay? He's at the time, he was like a 12-year-old film critic, okay?
That's awesome.
It is cool. It is cool. I mean,
is he on Rotten Tomatoes too at 13 years old?
I'm not sure on that one. That I'm not sure on. But now he's 19, okay? He's 19 now, and he's continuing going strong. I'm happy for him, man. I like to see the young critics and stuff like that. I mean, when he first, I'll tell you though, I'm not gonna lie. When he first started though, he was brutal. I mean, it was more about, he made the common mistake I think a lot of young film critics do, and I probably even made this mistake when I started reviewing, is that he wound up giving more like synopses than analyses. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like he wound up giving more of like an overview of what a plot was about, rather than like what he thought of it. And I think it was because he didn't know like the terminology.
Even when like, I mean, I never did reviews like you and Jackson Murphy have done. I've never really done it to that extent. Sometimes I'll do something on Facebook real quick when people like have been like messaging me like, oh, what did you think of the new superhero movie or whatever. But even like when I was younger, when I would talk about films to my friends, I would be doing the same thing, honestly.
Yeah, you'd be kind of almost given a plot rendition too, rather than like your own thoughts. And I think it stems from like a fact that you A, don't know the terminology, and B, you're just maybe not confident in your own opinion. Yeah. But once again, if there's one thing that Jackson Murphy can do, it's drum up controversy for his opinions and stuff like that. And just the fact that, because the kid does make a lot of like blanket statements and stuff. I will say that, reading his reviews to this day. But now he's ranked the Pixar movies, okay? He's ranked all 19 Pixar movies, all right? And here's his top 5, and it's very curious. Number 1 is Cars. Number 2 is Ratatouille. Number 3 is Toy Story 3. Number 4 is Cars 2. And number 5 is Toy Story 2. Now, his bottom 5 is number 15, Brave, number 16, A Bug's Life, number 17, Coco, number 18, Wall-E, and number 19, The Good Dinosaur.
You're hurting me, Jackson.
I mean, I agree with the last one. I think The Good Dinosaur should be
I
in the basement.
I would agree with that, yeah. The Good Dinosaur is probably like the weakest.
But I'm looking at this, though. I mean, even Cars 3 is 11, you know, and Up is 7. Like, it's very, again, I hate lists for a reason. But like,
even Inside Out is number 12. I'm just like, huh.
Yeah, really. And now here's the thing. Brave, we talked about this briefly with Coco. I think if people went back and watched Brave, they'd appreciate it again. Because in my opinion, Brave does not get loved, you know, very, very much.
I didn't like it.
I know.
I might go back and watch it, honestly, because I don't remember the film at all.
I like it. I mean, I think
I've only seen it once, too.
I have too. I think the thing I like about Brave, though, is I like the mother-daughter relationship and how it was built around a compromise. I like that. I'm not going to say it's even top 10 Pixar, but it's definitely better than a lot of people give credit for. That's for sure, at least. I mean, Jackson puts the original Toy Story at like number 13. The one thing and in my opinion, he's got Finding Nemo at 9. I rank Finding Nemo as like bottom 5 Pixar in my opinion.
Really?
That's my
For me, it's Finding Dory, honestly.
I liked, in my opinion, Finding Dory's better than Finding Nemo.
You know, and to be fair too, I wasn't the biggest fan of Finding Nemo even as a kid, and when I watched it like older now, I was like, yeah, I still feel the same way.
It's good. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it's very simple. It's very simple, number one. It doesn't really have a lot of dramatic depth, in my opinion, that isn't on the surface. You know what I mean? Like, no pun intended, because it takes place in the ocean. But there's no outside of the father trying to find Nemo, there's not really much to this story. And like, I think that, you know, people like to knock Cars and stuff, but at least Cars had like a couple different ideas, like legacy, mortality, even in a way, dealing with greatness. There was a lot in Cars.
There's a lot of themes there.
Yes, and I will say Cars, I'm just going to spoil it right now, Cars is in my top 5. Let's start with yours, though. Let's go number 5.
You want to go from 5 to up?
5. Number 1. No pun intended. Go from 5 to up over here. But anyway, that's a good one. I like that. 5 to 1. Let's go. You start.
All right. Well, number 5 is the film we just recently reviewed. It's Coco for me.
Really? Nice.
Yeah. If you listened to it about 3 weeks ago, I think now, I really truly loved the movie. I love the visuals of it. I thought I liked the story of it, and as Steve and I both stated, the third act of this movie is really, really good, honestly. And I love the visuals. I love the twists it takes, and the third act is great. And I love the voice acting as well. I thought for the young kid played by, I'm gonna forget the name because I don't have the name in front of me, but I thought he did a great job, as well as the rest of the voice cast, basically.
Anthony Gonzalez. I believe that's the kid. I believe that was him. Gail Garcia Bernal.
I also love the idea of the whole like land of the dead, how it worked, like how you get to go back to see your family, like through like Pixar's like animation, the whole concept of death and everything. I thought they handled it very well for a kid's film.
Yes, and there's a very interesting. That's another movie too. The best Pixar movies, in my opinion, are the ones that have real layers to them. I think, and that one, in my opinion, did like that. That one, there was a lot of different crafty layers in terms of like the way things kind of were structured, the way things, you know, the worlds were created. It was essentially a culturally relevant Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
That I really appreciate, and I really found myself getting into. You know what I mean? Number 5 for me is Cars. It really is. I like it a lot. I think it's a very good movie.
I don't think, honestly, the first Cars, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think the first Cars film is that bad as everybody makes it out to be.
No, and the thing that I liked about Cars, too, was Cars was a good ensemble character piece, too. A lot of good characters, a lot of good voice actors in the film, really engaging storyline, too. Great setting in Radiator Springs. I liked it a lot, and I really connected, too, with kind of the small town vibe and, like, the one stoplight town and everything like that. Mm-hmm. I found a lot of it was very sympathetic. And I know before, and I mentioned it again within the Coco review, was that it was one of those movies too that didn't get a lot of love because when it came out, I remember it was actually Pixar didn't release anything in 2005, so it was almost 2 years since we had gotten a Pixar movie at that time. But the problem was that what a lot of people thought is the problem was the fact that Cars really, first they had The Incredibles that came out 2 years before.
Yeah.
And it was, for a while, Pixar had a very hard time getting people down, which is why they animated fish, monsters, bugs, toys. Like, I mean, if you go back and look at the original Toy Story, look at how odd Andy and Sid look. They got these big, like,
anime eyes,
these almost blocky kind of
stiff heads,
that don't really move right. They had a very hard time creating and rendering like people. It was very difficult for them. And I think a lot of people like the way they did it in Cars. And then after the fact, then they come out and do Cars, and they animate, vehicles and stuff. It was just kind of strange, you know what I mean? And there's also, admittedly too, there's 3 Cars movies now. And a reviewer, I can't remember the name of them, but they mentioned in Cars 3, they mentioned that like with Cars 3 that they should be like answering a lot of questions. It might be the last Cars movie. Like we still don't really know where cars come from.
We don't.
We don't know.
I don't know how the world really works, honestly.
No, and like the other thing is too is like with Cars is that the other issue I think is that you also don't know what happens when cars die. And this was the thing with Cars 3 too that I didn't understand. Here's the thing. What the hell happened to Doc Hudson? Like, it's never really said.
Just rusted up, man.
Did he rust? Did he go to the junkyard? Did he just stop working? Like,
he ran out of gas. Like, what happens if you run out of gas? You just croak?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand. Like, is running out of gas the equivalent of, like, starvation? I mean, there's a lot of questions. And I think the other issue was, too, with Cars, and I think it's when a lot of people saw this, is I think a lot of people, like, up until Cars, the 5 or 6 Pixar movies we got up until Cars, people kind of like to view them as you know, like they were all in the same world. You know what I mean? Like it was all in the same world. Where Cars, though, it has to take place in a different universe. It has to.
Unless if like, you know, the machines rose up and like killed us all, I guess.
Unless Cars is like Cars is like the
Terminator.
Cars is like the penultimate like dystopian future or something, you know? I mean, it's easy to make fun of. I like it a lot. I think it's a well-made movie. Cars is my number 5 favorite Pixar film, though. You go number 4. Give your number 4 and number 3.
Okay, number 4 is Up.
Up.
Yeah, I love this movie a lot. A lot of people always talk about how the first 5 minutes is just gonna break you down, and that's very true. But what I like about the movie is just the relationship between Carl and Russell. I love the two. Like, I've had a great time always watching that. I also love the whole like the humor with the dog and the bird, I think, is always great. But to me, at the very end of the day, it's the relationship between Carl and Russell that I really enjoy throughout most of the movie. I really think they're two of the greatest like Pixar characters they've made, and especially like, you know, having that whole like father and son dynamic thing going on too.
Well said.
I really like the animation in this one as well. And then going to 3 is something that deals with animation and character design. It's Monsters, Inc. I love all the way the monsters are designed. I love going back to how the world works. I love the Monsters, Inc. world. I like how, like, you know, how the monsters live in a separate world. How they get to our world is very interesting and everything. It's the whole, like, world and universe thing, as well as Mike and Sully's relationship, as well as the designs of all the characters, especially Steve Buscemi's character. Oh my God, I'm gonna blank on the name now.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it right now too.
Oh man, but yeah, Steve Buscemi's character, like, what a great, like, you look at that design, it's like that screams a villain.
Yes, and I like, if there's one thing I liked about Monsters Inc. too, it's the voice acting. Randall.
There we go.
I couldn't think of the name. Yeah, but I liked Monsters Inc. It's funny. I liked Monsters Inc. for the voice cast. I think like Billy Crystal, John Goodman. They got great people. Now, what I liked about Monsters University was Monsters University. A lot of people sleep on it, but Monsters University was a really good like movie to show Pixar's like lighting techniques.
Yeah.
And Pixar's prowess for stuff
we
like
this. We touched on this during Coco's review.
And like, I like to think that Monsters University was a lead up to what they showcased in Coco.
Yeah.
I really think so. I think it's a beautiful showcase in that respect too. And I really do appreciate it. I really did appreciate what they tried to do with it and stuff like that. And I think too, the villains of Pixar or of Monsters Inc. too. I think the villains are great too.
Oh yeah.
You know, what was the one lady that was always like harassing Mike? Roz, I think her name was.
Yeah, Roz. We're always watching.
Yeah, always watching. Yeah, I'm always. That's another good one. You know what I mean? There's some really good moments in that probably rank up as some of the best in Pixar. You know, I firmly believe that.
And I completely agree.
Number 4 for me, and now going to number 3. Number 4 for me is going to be Inside Out. I like Inside Out quite a bit. I think Pete Docter, who directed Up too, I think Pete Docter is probably Pixar's best director outside of Lasseter. I think that Pete Docter is a real talent when it comes to, you know, coming up with stories and feeding those stories with the kind of dramatic depth that they need to really succeed and really find kind of a direction and such. I like what he does. I think that he's tremendously talented in that respect. And I think Inside Out really is a testament to his strengths as a writer, and I think is sort of a person to come up with a concept and fully execute that concept, run with it, develop it, fuse it with great characters. I liked Inside Out quite a bit. I think it stands as one of my favorite Pixar films. Absolutely.
It's like a runner-up there for me. It would be like, it's very near my top 5 for me.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I just had a conversation with somebody at the station too a couple days ago. I was actually on Sunday, I believe, and he came in and we were talking, and he said he listened to our Coco discussion, and he even said too, he's like, I agree with you, but he said too, he's like, I was not a fan of Inside Out, and I said, and we were talking, I was like, oh, okay, what'd you not like about it? And he went into it, but he said one of the reasons, he said, I don't think it was a kid's movie, and that's very true. It's not that you wouldn't show it to a kid, but I think you have to be like at least 13 to really grasp
everything that movie's talking about.
Because like even Pete Docter said too, like I've watched interviews about the movie, Pete Docter's even said too, he said, we had a couple difficult things with the movie. There was two difficult things with Inside Out. He said we had a hell of a time trying to make joy not insufferable. He said we had a hell of a time. Like he said, I gave the script because Amy Poehler voices her. He said I gave the script to Amy, and he's like, she read it and she goes, I love it, but I play the worst character ever. She's like just reading it, like just how positive she is. She's like she's gonna get insufferable. But the other problem too that they had was like they couldn't figure out Riley, the main character. They had a hard time trying to get what her age would be. And Pete Docter said he's like my daughter was like, because she's like 11 in the movie. And he's like, my daughter was 10, and I thought that was a good age. He said because you can't do too young. You can't do too young because they don't really understand the world around him. But you can't do post puberty. So like you have to look at like between 9 and like 11 or 12.
Yeah, I was gonna say before the teenage years.
Really before middle school grabs a hold and ruins you. You know what I mean? I think
you start making inappropriate jokes all the time.
Yes, indeed, and like the girls cling to the one side, and the guys, there's a certain sector of guys that don't know the invention of deodorant. You know what I mean? That's really what it comes down to. I liked Inside Out though, and I also think Inside Out the world of like the world of like the emotions and the brain and the cognitive abilities too. I just think that's such a great world. I loved it. Number 3 for me, we'll call this a 3 for 3. I go for Toy Story 3 right here. I think Toy Story 3 is one of the most Pixar movies, second to one I will mention later that you could probably already figure out. I love the animation in Toy Story 3. It is so colorful. And there's the other thing with Toy Story 3 is you got to really look at the optics of it. It was coming off several years, over 10 years, almost 10 years of a franchise laying dormant and not doing anything. And then to come back and have the finale and the send-off that they did, not to mention, like I said, get most of the cast back, save for like Jim Varney, who died, and then to introduce like lots of Hug and Bear and all these other characters and stuff. To go back and do that and do it as well as you did, do it as poignantly as you did, and did it as emotional as you did, is so unprecedented, and we almost take it for granted, but it was an emotionally inspiring experience seeing that in the theater and watching that movie. It is to date the only Pixar movie to get nominated for Best Picture, and I think it damn well deserves it. It really, because I mean, it was another movie too that like it went beyond like best animated film. This was one of the best films of the year, just plain and simple. And that's when I think you really realize, and this is why it was another thing too. I think people were upset. I can only compare it to because like The Incredibles, Cars followed The Incredibles. Cars was disappointing. They followed Toy Story 3 with Cars 2. So like
Cars just comes in at the wrong time.
That's a come down. That's like when Lil Wayne followed the Carter 3 with Rebirth. You know what I mean? It's like, because you know what the problem is like you're riding high on popularity, so then you take a big risk and you wind up like taking 2 steps back.
Yeah.
I want to pause here. We'll break for about a song or two, come back, give our final top 2 favorite Pixar films. This is a great segment. I'm really enjoying this.
I've been having a lot of fun discussing about this.
I'm enjoying this. Be back in about 3-4 minutes. This is Sleepless with Steve. Here we are, Sleepless with Steve, back on FM 89. Very nice to have you with me right now. Me and Joe Viso are going to wrap up our ranking of the Pixar films. Having a good
like
friends.
Rethinking, yeah, it's like
to kind of go back and revisit these.
Looking back on your childhood and everything else, honestly,
because this is our Disney. You know what I mean? This
is very true. Yeah,
this is. I mean, I know it's a branch of Disney, but I mean, this is really like our Disney. I'm gonna let you take number 2. We'll both break out down to number 1 and stuff, but you go number 2, right?
Number
now.
2.
Number
Okay,
2
well,
with that for Pixar.
Being that I'm a big fan of like superheroes and everything, it's Incredibles for me.
Mm-hmm.
I love the music for this. I was in jazz in high school, and we played the theme for The Incredibles. And I loved playing it. I had a great time playing it with the jazz band and everything.
I'm sure you weren't the only one.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Everybody loved it. We wanted to play it again during our spring concert. But yeah, I love, being a big fan of superhero movies. I thought like they just totally got this down right. They got the characters in this movie. I love the family. I love the Incredibles. I love the interaction between them all. I love the father, like, how much the family means to him. The action in this is great. Brad Bird, I think, did a great job with the Incredibles, honestly. It's one of my favorite movies, and being a big fan of like growing up, like watching superhero shows. This was like, as a kid, I loved it, and watching it as, you know, when I got older, I loved it as much as I did as a kid.
You know what I love about, and I haven't seen it in a few years. I'm gonna rewatch it because the sequel's coming out next June. But you know what I love about The Incredibles though is the way the characters reflect the stereotypes of the roles of a family.
Yeah.
Like the mother has the ability to stretch her body into like shapes and forms, kind of like the mother, like an archetypal mother that feels like she has
cleaning the house and everything,
like doing multiple things at once. The father is has super strength and like power through and just put up this kind of like barrier and stuff like that. Like he's tough and everything like that. He could take on anything.
He's a strong man.
The daughter has like the ability to project, I think, force fields and like be invisible and stuff. Like what teenage girl doesn't want that? Like to put up walls and put up barriers around herself and stuff. The kid Dash is like the ability to like run quickly, like
get out of trouble,
run away from his problems and stuff. And you know what and then the other thing, and this is, I saw this on the internet, so I can't even take credit. And then you got Jack, who's really just a jack of all trades.
Yeah,
I
saw that post too recently. I was like, that's amazing. I never thought of it like that.
I just love how like the family members represent each of like their own sort of roles and like what how you view the archetypal mother, father, the roles in this. Like I said, the only reason I will say it's not in my top 5 is because I haven't seen it in about 10 years.
Yeah.
So like I'm gonna go back and
I watch it like every so often. It's like because it's this high for me. I love it so much. And then once again, going back to the whole villain thing, Syndrome. I love that villain so much. I love his backstory. Like, the reason why he became a villain. It's so good.
And they actually went into detail about that. Most of these movies don't even have the courtesy to give you that anymore. So that is really beautiful. Now, this might seem like a cop out too, but number 2 for me is Toy Story, the original Toy Story from '95. I can't believe the film is already as old as it is, already over 20 years old. Not a lot to say about this one that hasn't already been said. It was a movie that I loved as a kid. Watched it on VHS. Kind of funny thinking about watching like a CGI animated film on VHS, but
I had it on VHS too, so you're not the only one.
The clamshell cases and stuff. I love it though. I think that this movie is just as good of a comedy as it is like an adventure movie too. I think that it was a movie that has an ensemble of these toy characters, finds a way to kind of get them into this all-encompassing role, to work towards a common goal. I think the dynamic of Woody and Buzz is tremendous too in this movie. I think there's a really good aura of friendship. I mean, you can't neglect that Randy Newman score either. Oh yeah. And how great that sounds. I know they made fun of it on like Family Guy and stuff like that, but have you ever seen that? But like I love it. I think it's really a beautiful movie, and it really serves as my second favorite Pixar movie. So plainly said. Joseph, time for you to give the number 1 Pixar movie, my friend. Don't let us down.
Okay, well, if you can take the trilogy, go ahead and take it, but it's the Toy Story trilogy. But if you need one film, if I had to pick out of 3, it would be Toy Story 3.
Yes.
Everything you literally said about Toy Story 3, I 100% agree with you on. It is the perfect send-off, honestly, for this. I know there's going to be a Toy Story 4, unfortunately, and I wish there wasn't, because this is literally, like you said, the perfect send-off for these characters. Buzz, Woody, Mr. Potato Head, all these characters. It's just a grand send-off for them. And it's also just like coming back to this years later, like you were saying, I grew up with this as a kid, and then coming back to it, like, I saw this going into high school. Andy was leaving for college, but you kind of feel like you're Andy, honestly, at this point watching this. And it has that emotional effect on you if you grew up with Toy Story. And it really hit me home there. And like you said, this was nominated for Best Picture, and you think it should have won. I even agree with you there.
I don't know if it should have won.
You think it won?
I don't think it should have won. I said it damn well deserved
deserves it. Okay.
Nomination.
Never mind. But
at least.
I would have been fine if it would have won, because when the year it came out, I think it was my favorite movie that year. I loved it so much, which is why it's number 1 on my list. I love the trilogy as a whole. It's like one of my favorite trilogies out there.
It's one of the best.
Yeah, honestly. And Tom Hanks and... Oh my God!
Tom Hanks. Oh my God! I'm like with Tim Allen.
Tom Hanks and Tim Allen as Woody and Buzz. Fantastic. To me, when I think Pixar, those 2 characters pop up in my head immediately, without a doubt.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I love the movies, and I think 3 was just amazing, honestly.
Yeah, it really tested the weight of what an animated movie can bear. Similar to this next one that serves as my number 1, Up. Up is my favorite by far Pixar movie. Really a movie that shows how far an animated film can take a story. Really shows how the dynamic of two characters of different ages can really connect. Ed Asner as Carl is terrific. Terrific character. Really fun character to really spend a lot of time with too. The movie is beautifully colored. I mean, the scenes as the house is traveling on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of balloons and whatnot. I mean, it's just a beautiful sequence, and it's awe-inspiring too, just in the way that this movie captivates you emotionally. You know, and it really winds up being another excellent film. And it was also, I'm looking right now, I do stand corrected, this was also nominated for Best Picture. This was also nominated up.
I was going to say, I think that one was nominated too, because I think this came out
before Toy Story 3.
Okay, it came out before.
The year before.
I thought it came out after. Never mind.
My year. That was my, I stand corrected on that. And again, it deserves it totally. I think it's a truly gorgeous movie. I think it's a movie that is so conscientious of its characters. And again, it's Pete Docter, who I've said before, I think Pete Docter is the best, most talented, in a sea of talented, in a pool of just talented actors.
He stands out.
Like Andrew Stanton and everything. Pete Docter's something. And I think that he really winds up being, you know, a very compelling director with a good sense of like an emotional grasp. You know what I mean? So there's our ranking. Top 5 Pixar movies. Loved it. I thought it was a good time ranking those movies.
I had a great time ranking them too, and just like hearing your list compared to mine.
You know, and yeah, so ours was different. Ours was really, was really pretty different.
I think the only two films we had on there that was the same were Toy Story 3 and then Up.